Joining us today from Beirut is UNDP resident representative in Lebanon, Blerta Aliko. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Um, I I wanted to first ask, there's been significant developments in the region over the past 24 hours, but for now, that does not seem to include Lebanon. And over the past weeks, we've seen shocking and devastating images, to say the least, come out of the country. Can you paint us a picture of the current situation?
So once again, thank you for having me in this interview. The situation is very bleak, and I wish I were more optimistic, but considering what actually the news came out when we were all contemplating, does it include Lebanon, doesn't it include Lebanon, I'm afraid that we are not as optimistic as we would have hoped in the early hours in the morning. There are still shelling happening in the south while people are desperately trying to return. The situation is what in the UN terms is called a perfect storm, because we have years of economic collapse, we have years of instability, plus compounded by the 2024 escalation, and now with this recent escalation that caused massive displacement, once again above 1.2 million, with 1,500 more victims into it, without counting that among those there are women and children, hittings and killings of the paramedics, UNIFIL, and all other first responders that are there to help people in need. Situation is bleak because also macroeconomic perspective, as soon as we started as a country in Lebanon to have some light at the end of the tunnel, the situation got really backtracked, the production and the economy stopped. And then let's not forget that this comes at the backdrop of the big economic crisis that happened in 2019, where the banking system, the fiscal space of the country is completely non-existent. And I don't want to put dramatic tones to it, but this is the reality that Lebanon and Lebanese are dealing with at the moment, with a very fragile economy, a very fragile and exhausted society, a very fragile overall system of reconciliation, and how we bring the system and the country back to its feet. And for a very optimistic moment that we had a government and a president where the political blockage was really finally overcome, then we are facing this other big escalation of hostilities where we don't have visibility at the end day, or when is the ceasefire coming to play. So it's a compounded crisis. It's very hard for everyone that is living in Lebanon these days, but more importantly for the displaced, which are in the streets, which are in the schools and in the shelters, wherever they can cope with at the moment.
Well, a lot of people might not understand the role of UNDP as a development entity in the midst of a crisis, in the midst of an ongoing conflict. Can you tell us what you're doing right now to respond to the needs of the country and local communities?
UNDP, it's a very well-known development organization in Lebanon with a long history of partnerships and of great work, and also with a lot of baggage that comes with trust and with the legacy of great work. As you rightly said, you will not see UNDP in a first line of first responders of delivering food or, sorry, there is a bomb here happening just now, so I got a bit distracted. Anyway, maybe it's a sonic bomb, so it's sonic. Oh my God, there are 4 of them, 5, 6. So it's about, sorry, it's a carpet bombing. We have an emergency. I have to leave the
Absolutely.
office.
So, Blerta, thank you so much for rejoining this interview. It was pretty dramatic. Can you tell us how the situation is right now with you? Are you and colleagues safe?
Yes, thank you so much. And we are all safe and all colleagues are counted for. So majority of the office colleagues in the office are reported safe. We are on the basement of the UN house here in Beirut. And the rest of colleagues who are working from home have also reported safe. The situation is very critical since we last spoke. When we spoke, there were 9 strikes that I was hearing them, and then are more than 40 in Beirut and are more than hundreds across the country. And so far, the Red Cross Director General has confirmed that there are more than 300 casualties of lives. So, and we don't have good news. It seems like the strikes will continue during the day and the night. So let's see where this madness, takes us today.
Well, actually, I know we want to highlight the work of UNDP and all of the projects going on, but this situation actually brings to mind the question about UNDP colleagues on the ground and their families. A lot of them are Lebanese, most of them are Lebanese, and their families are directly affected by the conflict. How's morale among staff, and what's being done by the agency to support them?
The first priority for us has been always the safety and well-being of the staff. And for us has been an uphill battle because, the surface and if you want, the strikes have gone very intensive, not only from the areas where were deemed more critical and through early warnings, but also the strikes that are targeting certain individuals in other areas across the country. We have more than 28 colleagues that are relocated, and for that, UNDP really makes sure that them and their families are safe and they are provided for financially, at least during the relocation period. Of course, it's not easy to relocate and to leave everything behind and not being sure you're going to find a home to go back to. And then we have many more colleagues through the head counting and the warding systems that we make sure that everybody is safe. So the well-being is the priority for us before anything else, because without our staff, without the well-being and safety of our staff, we don't exist here in the country. So thank you for asking. And this latest strike, we are all accounted for. Few of colleagues have already faced issues with their housings, etc. But when it comes to materiality, this comes second. So the first is the lives that are safe.
Yeah, definitely. And before, of course, these very dramatic events took place, we were discussing UNDP's role as the conflict situation continues that many people might not fully understand. So can you tell us what you're doing right now to respond to the needs of the country and local communities?
From the day one of the crisis, UNDP supported the government of Lebanon through the Disaster Risk Management Coordination Unit. This has been a work of more than a decade long that UNDP supports the government at the central level, and also at the governorates and union municipalities. The operation room was immediately activated, and the team was behind supporting the government leadership in coordinating this crisis. Coordination in this case means knowing the data, coordinating the response, understanding the needs, and then basically supporting the whole government's unified approach between local and central levels. We are very proud of that work because for us has two major impacts. One is that it strengthens the state to be in the lead and take accountability for its own citizens across the territory. And second is providing the cutting edge tools and information, including GIS data, where the real-time information flows, is accessible, is transparent, and is shared amongst all the stakeholders in order to support the affected displaced in a most efficient way possible. So this is something that we don't do the day of the crisis. We have prepared for it. And this is the core function of UNDP, is to support capacities, then to make them useful when the situation requires them to. The second part is that UNDP, you will not see us in a way of being the humanitarian actors, right? Because we are not there and that's not our mandate. But we support the first responders through supporting the civil defense capacities, and the support comes from the coordination support to their outreach efforts, to protection measures, and to equipment in order to support the affected population. So the search and rescue teams, which are at the forefront of the first responders, I think, which with a lot of humility, I do have the most admiration for. This is where UNDP's focus has been. and also with union municipalities and governorates when it comes to the fire brigades. So why this response? Because we are in the business of supporting the state institutions at all levels to respond to the crisis at the moment, while also strive for the humanitarian inputs to be as a lasting assets for the recovery and the day after. So all the support to civil defense, to governorates, to union municipalities, to fire brigades are all done in an institutional way in order to support and enhance their function and their role in the times when they are needed the most.
Yeah. Well, uh, aside from the dramatic impact of the conflict itself in material terms, there's also a real impact on social cohesion in the country. And if anybody who's monitoring news analysis and social media activity in the country can very quickly see that political rhetoric has been uh, violent, to be honest. So, what is UNDP doing to counter this narrative and quell tensions?
So, as I mentioned in the very first question about the underlying causes of the situation we are in now, I mean, I didn't speak about the root causes, but one of the root causes is the sectarian division, which is very deep in the country. And the whole work of UNDP over the past, I would say 6-7 years since, with the downfall of the economic crisis, with the increase of the political polarization, and also the impact that the prior escalation had since with the war in Gaza, is that we have been working in monitoring the tensions, across layers, intracommunal, intercommunal, within the Lebanese society, with Lebanese and other refugees and other migrant population, and at different layers. So as you rightly said, we are facing a peak of those dynamics at all levels possible, which is exacerbated also by the very divisive political narratives, and unfortunately underlined by strong fears of identity crisis, if I may put it very bluntly. So what is UNDP doing to counter is really leveraging all the networks that we have been working for years to be its function of mitigating and preventing such rhetorics from taking scale, but also documenting so that we can alert where is needed in order to take preemptive measures from the government, authorities, political parties, media, and all, and even among the citizens themselves. So we have the insider mediators, we have peace building committees, we have mobilized civil society organizations, we do fact checking through the organizations that are very specialized in order to counter mis and disinformation. And we have also launched a big peace building campaign across the country in big billboards, and hoping to also reach a different scale in the coming days, because it's an incremental approach. And we are very touched when we hear displaced communities that are coming and saying, thank you for sharing a message of solidarity. Thank you for sharing a message of togetherness. Thank you for the humility and compassion, which I have to say, many, many Lebanese people, share the same messages. And this is how we build the campaign together with the government. So it's not messages that UNDP woke up in the morning, but it's the messages that we hear in the streets of Beirut, in the streets of Saida, in the streets of Mount Lebanon, everywhere we are. And it was important to amplify this message of togetherness, empathy, and national identity as Lebanese going through this together. So we hope really that this campaign will have an outcome, but this is not a finished job. This is one that's a call why we need to continue working, and everything we do has to be done through conflict sensitive lenses, looked at the tension perspective, how cash is distributed, how aid is delivered, how everything that we are doing recovery has to be looked from that perspective in order for us to really apply what we preach, the do no harm, and bringing the whole elements of social contract and trust between the state and citizen at the forefront.
Yeah. Well, back kind of to the material construction, basically, or reconstruction. We saw today hundreds of strikes simultaneously across the country. Already the amount of destruction in the south is beyond comprehension. Where does one start to prepare for recovery and reconstruction?
It's we don't start after. We have already started preparing. So just to tell you that 1 week before the whole escalation took place again, I was in the south and I was 3.5 kilometers from the border, where already a lot of destruction had taken place. And we were there to inaugurate the police station in Kana, to really inaugurate the agriculture aggregator center in Marj Salem. We were in Vintage Bay looking at the cooperatives and women farmers. And I'm very sad to say that this is also all gone as we are speaking today together. And so we have already, and unfortunately in the case of Lebanon, have worked for years in having the tools for the damage and loss assessments, combining them and correlating with information on the recovery needs, on human development index that UNDP measures annually in every country, and then aggregated at the regional and the global level. And is basically this is what we do, right? And this is where we work very closely with the national sectors, with the ministries, with governorates, but also with partners across the UN, with the World Bank and European Union, to really come with a common understanding of a methodology of analysis, shared data, and shared recommendations when it comes to the prioritization of how we support, being it on the reconstruction part, but I want also to emphasize on the recovery part, because building an agriculture aggregator and putting the bricks together, or putting a school or putting a health center is part of the equation. Having the farms actually working and having that, the environment protection of the soil being able to be fertile again, working that the school has the children to attend, and also the health center. These are priorities that are looked into in conjunction with the reconstruction. That's why we call it recovery and reconstruction. I need to say that this we will build on the data that we had done already for the response to the prior crisis. I'm afraid to say that the coefficient of support is going to go even lower, which means that the needs are going to be higher, because the layers of destructions now are building on the top of each other in less than 2 years. So what can I say? We hope that between the generosity of the donors, between the priorities of the government state budget, and all the efforts us as UN agency and international partners, we can be able to put our resources where are best used, and with clear priorities and transparent directions when it comes to priority settings.
Well, identifying the needs, of course, is very important. But right now, it seems like the major donors in the region are not satisfied maybe with Lebanon's political performance and are not supportive of much of what's going on in the country. So, how can you convince these traditional donors that an investment in Lebanon, Lebanon's recovery and reconstruction, is worthwhile?
Well, you are right to connect the political agenda with the funding streams. And there is no kind of secret that the funding is political. So, and we have seen it, we know it. But I also have to say that there has been a lot of solidarity. So I can tell you that in 2024, in the Flash Appeal has been one of the best resourced flash appeals that was not only dealing with the humanitarian needs, but also with the social stability, which means the stabilizing of social services and access of the population to social services, being water, energy, waste. However, there is also donor fatigue. There are many crises going on. The Gulf countries themselves are going through hard times. European countries who are the donors also are going through difficult situations. So the funding is not at the level that we would have hoped or expected for. But then it forces us to do better in terms of prioritizing and also in terms of building synergies. That's why, as UNDP representative, I insist that humanitarian inputs need to be delivered support in a way that contributes to the recovery assets, so that we cannot continue throwing only on addressing immediate humanitarian needs, but to think how we are delivering that water. Is it bottled? Is it trucked? Or is it through a pipe? How we are delivering that access to energy? Is it solar? Is it fuel? Is it how? Through generators or not? So these are where you start basically making impact in even in the funding that we have received. The situation from the fiscal space of the government is not great, and so therefore any support is needed. However, I have to say that the generosity towards Lebanon has not been missing. So there is a lot of support, but definitely that's why we are pushing for the approach which is stabilizing the state and having the state deliver for its citizens, because all other parallel systems, no matter how effective they might be in the short run, they are ineffective in the long run. So this is why for us as UNDP and as the UN, the stabilizing the state authority, stabilizing the service delivery from the state is one of the key messages that we want to continue to advocate with the donors, partners, and every development actor that supports Lebanon.
So, given that there has been generous support to Lebanon from donors, what are the biggest challenges right now UNDP faces in the country? What do you need to be able to successfully carry out your work?
I can tell you very frankly that 50% of the development program of UNDP is suspended. We have access issues. We cannot go in areas where they need us the most, where we need to rehabilitate maybe solar panels on the top of a roof of a union of municipalities for that to work, or where we have to put solar panels to water pump for the entire village to access water. We stopped the work on Tirba station where 120,000 people are supposedly by June to have access to fresh water, which was a station destroyed during the prior escalation in November 2024. So this is the reality. So we want access. We want access, and we want to be able then to operate as UNDP and as partners that are working with UNDP in full safety. The other part is the deconflicting of our interventions. So these are development, these are essential services. This is access to basic services like water, waste management, and energy access. So basically, the moment they're destroyed, you have the entire population immediately impacted in one go. We have a huge part of the work that we do on wastewater treatment. We do work on the agriculture irrigation work, and all of it, when it comes to the south and the Bekaa, is on hold because we cannot put lives of colleagues at risk. As we started this conversation, is their well-being and safety is a priority. So access and deconfliction for us, that would be key. And I'm sure that once we go back there, then, and hopefully that those interventions are not destroyed again, as I was telling you, that it's a case as we speak now. So there's quite some of those developments which have impact on people's lives that have been unfortunately hit directly or collateral damage.
Ms. Blerta, Aliko, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us today.
Thank you so much, Azad, for having me.